On to item 26, but I have to leave you all now, so I shall hand over to Andrew.
Great. Yeah, great. Thank you.
So we did have Lynette here to finish off that community board one from the start.
All right, okay, so we'll come back to that shortly. We'll do this one next,
yep.
And then I'll go to that.
Here we go.
Okay, so item 26. Paul, welcome to the table, thank you. And what I might get you to do is, we'll take the report as read, but if we can get you just to provide some commentary on the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here we go, that's better. If we're taking the report as read, I guess the main things to flag with you, members will recall in May that we took a report to you on the amended Christchurch Housing Accord that Council adopted. One of those key items in the Accord was the setting up of a shared equity home ownership scheme in that report, and the amended Accord clearly flags that this is to be funded jointly between the Crown, who have contributed $3.07 million, with the expectation that Council does the same. So that was in the report to you in May. So this report comes to you. We've progressed that with MB. We've concluded an agreement for funding with them around some parameters of the scheme, including eligibility and criteria. For households, suffice to say, it's pitched at middle and low income working households, so that's the point of difference with this one, perhaps to some other schemes that typically operate at a middle and above median household income. So that's the difference there. Two things to draw your attention with. We have been able to get stated explicitly in the agreement for funding that Council's contribution is indeed subject to next year's LTP, so that's crystal clear in the agreement there. Having said that, there are some caveats and conditions in the agreement whereby if Council does not match or only partially matches the Crown funding, then it will be required to repay the Crown funding in full, regardless of whether some of that Crown funding has been spent. So for example, if some of it had been spent and there were some existing mortgages through the scheme and Council decided not to match the funds, then we would have to pay all that back and manage out the mortgages ourselves. So just to be clear with you on that one. Probably the second item really to draw your attention is we've flagged some options in the report for the operation of the scheme, and indeed one of the recommendations in the report is to come back to you with an agreement with a third party to administer and operate the scheme. So the range of options in there: trust, a CCO, a division of council, and those sorts of things. So council would still retain the governance, monitoring and parameter setting of the scheme, because clearly this is a scheme for council to govern and manage, and that's why the Crown funding has come to us under the auspices of the Christchurch Housing Accord. So that's my brief introduction, Mr. Chair.
That's great, thank you very much indeed. So we'll move to any questions that there may be next. Are there any questions on this? Phil.
Thanks very much, Paul. My question is really about servicing the mortgages, and so it just seems that for people who are for a median house price, the minimum can be the percentage of a person's income, I guess. Does that mean up to 40% of their income? I'm talking about the servicing line in 5.9. Where I'm coming from, it just seems quite expensive, quite a lot for people to pay.
Yes, the scheme proposes that there's a maximum shared equity contribution of 40% of the value of the purchase price. The caveat that we'd have in there for affordability for the households is that they spend no more than 30% of their household income on servicing their mortgage, not the shared equity component, but say for example if the shared equity was 40%, then the remaining 60%. So
that 40% is for people of the equity,
yes,
not the income.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, maximum of 40%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Vicky, you're wanting to move this?
I would love to move this.
And Glenn, you're happy to second? Yep. And now we'll move into debate. So, Vicky.
I would love to move this because this has been 3.25 years in the making. This was arose from the Christchurch Housing Accord. It was never part of the original Housing Accord. It was a long coffee originally with Nick Smith, and since then we have gone through 3 years and 3 ministers trying to get this across the line. So we've gone through Nick Smith, Paula Bennett and Amy Adams has picked this up, and actually her staff have run with it incredibly well from the beginning of this year. The point of this is that it meets part of the council's housing policy. So we have a housing policy that spans the spectrum from zero homelessness to helping people actually buy their own first house. And if we live in a city where anything is possible, the fact that you could actually buy your own home in Christchurch with a deposit of $19,000 as per the lower quartile priced house in the table here is absolutely amazing, because you can get the Home Start package, which is usually $10,000 if there's 2 of you, and if you've got some KiwiSaver savings for a few years, you can actually make the deposit on a house and it can be affordable. And for any city to have affordable housing that you can buy is so good. Such a feature that sets us aside from Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Queenstown, Wanaka, so many places. And I think this actually is a game changer for a lot of families who have missed out on the opportunity to buy a house and are struggling to actually get the deposit together. I love the scheme. I think the fact that we can get it and get it operating in Christchurch is fantastic. The cost to us is $1 million a year in capital, so the impact on rates is 0.02 of 1% per annum for 3 years. To get this up and running, and I'm hoping that it will expand well beyond that once it's operational. I like the fact that we contracted out. I think the banks will do most of the work and somebody will administer it on the council's behalf. The money stays the property of the council. I think this is actually the best thing to come out of the Housing Accord. In fact, I'm struggling to think what else came out of the Housing Accord. But this is definitely, which was never in the Housing Accord, is the best thing that's happened. I think it's actually incredibly exciting for a family with, say, 2 young kids who are on a relatively low to medium wage to actually think about being able to buy their own house and to treat that house as though it is completely theirs. They even get the joy of paying the insurance and the rates on it. And I think that's amazing for families. I think it's an incredible game changer. I love the scheme. It's been a long, hard struggle to get it here, but I think it's done very well to arrive here. I'd like to thank Paul for his endless patience with a number of government agencies on it, and I'd love us to pass it. I think it's excellent. I'd love us to start administering it.
Thank you.
Or somebody else do.
Yanni.
I won't repeat all that's been said by Vicky, but just to say that I'm very supportive of this initiative. It's also something that I've been really keen for us to pursue. And I just sort of share with councillors, anyone that's been to a Habitat for Humanity opening and seen the impact of people owning their own home, in terms of what that does for their hope and their optimism for being in the community and in the city, it's quite an extraordinary moment. And if we can help contribute to that, the sense where people can actually own their own home, then I think that's a real positive. Now, I think the comment has been made that, what else did we get out of the Housing Accord? I'd like to think that this is also a way in which we can start to improve the health of some of our housing. because if people have security of tenure, I think they're a lot more likely to invest in those properties. So, you know, that was one of the main things that came out post-earthquake, was the number of people who had to move repeatedly because of different circumstance, and the cost that that has on them, their families, and just the impact of children, for example, moving between schools, between different geographic areas. So if we can help in this city that more people can own something rather than fewer people own more, then I think that's a really good thing. I think this is a start towards doing it. It's our pilot, and, you know, I think we should also keep pursuing other opportunities through the housing accord in terms of things like inclusionary zoning and warrants of fitness. But this is a really good start, I think, to a positive initiative that will have a very, I think, important community impact.
Thank you. Glenn.
Thank you. Firstly, where's my mic gone? Firstly, full credit to Vicky, who's been pursuing various ministers over this, many phone calls over a long period of time. So this gives people a real chance. The LVR rules at the moment mean there's less lending available for people with less than a 20% deposit. So this is a pretty good deal. In terms of Christchurch, we might be talking about flash stadiums, etc., and we need to have those conversations. But we need to talk about Christchurch being an attractive place to live. And if you want to settle down here, put your roots down and not have potentially a landlord over your head who may pull the house out from you one day, then you actually need that security. There are two great securities in life. This is one, home ownership, the other being superannuation. You don't want to get to superannuation and be renting, because there's the chance that you know, that could be diminished itself if you get into strife. So this is fabulous. Yes, we might have excess housing stock in Christchurch at the moment, but there are less financial options for people to obtain that. So let's do what we can to get our lower to middle, or especially at the lower end, income earners into their own home, and try to reclaim this part of the Kiwi dream in little old Christchurch. I think that would be a great thing to do and could really be part of the overall attractive package for people to come and stay here.
Home ownership and the affordability of property remains a huge issue throughout New Zealand, and also in Christchurch as well. There are a lot of people that would aspire to own a home that haven't found a way to be able to afford to do that. And of course, home ownership and investment in a home, the ability to own a house and the ability to put roots down in a community, is another aspect of life that that really binds people to their neighbourhoods and to the city, really gives people the opportunity to put roots down and give them the confidence that they're part of a community that they can continue to be part of for as long as they choose to be, rather than being forced out of a house that they're renting or not being in control of their living situation in a way that they might like to be. So this initiative really does bring those outcomes of the financial security that comes from home ownership and the social security that comes from home ownership as well. So I'd certainly like to join with Glenn in acknowledging the huge amount of work that Vicky has done on this. It's great to see it result in a paper that we've got these resolutions in front of us and that we can approve this afternoon. So I'm very supportive of this. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried.